Listen, Dad, that beach house is nothing but a pile of rotting wood, sitting in waist-high grass and burning through property taxes. Mom wasted 26 years there for what? We need to sell it immediately. The money would be enough to put you in a special care facility where people will change your diapers and remind you to eat on time. At your age, you do not need a house. You need a place to spend the rest of your life without getting in the way of our work. Those were the words spoken by my own son Amory, the child I loved the most. In that moment I wished I had misheard him, or that those words had not come from my son at all. But no. I stood there with trembling hands holding the seashell mug my wife loved most. My chest tightened as if someone had swung a hammer into my shin. A kind of pain that cannot even turn into a sound. The children we spent our entire lives raising, caring for, loving, without condition. Their mother had barely been laid to rest, the warmth of her presence not even gone yet. And he had already turned to me as if I were an asset that needed to be liquidated. His face was calm and different. His eyes were glued to the tablet in his hands. He did not even bother to look at me once while saying those words. That was the moment I realized my value was nearly gone. Whatever little worth I had left was probably hidden in a single signature. And I knew then that this was the moment I had to stand firm. I had to face it head on. I could not make this easy for them. Welcome back to Dad's Real-Life Revenge. My name is Bernard. I am 75 years old this year. The age when my own children believe I should be placed in a care facility and quietly disappear. I am glad you are here to listen to me. Share the darkest corner of my family story. Stay with me until the end of this story. You might recognize parts of it somewhere out there in the place where you live. And leave a comment telling me your name and the city you are watching from. For this story, that means more than you know. Now let us return to that fateful morning. Everything began at 7:30 in the morning, just 6 months after Veronica passed away. The cold of that morning was nothing compared to the cold in my daughter's voice on the phone. Diana did not ask if I had slept the night before. She did not ask whether the wound in my leg was getting better. She went straight to asking for the keys to the jewelry boxes. Dad, Diana said through the speakerphone while I could hear the sound of packing tape tearing across cardboard boxes on her end of the line. Those porcelain sets are just gathering dust in your house. I will take them. And Mom's pearl necklace too. It does not suit you, and you never leave the kitchen anyway, so you will not need it. I sat alone in the silent kitchen looking up at our faded wedding photograph on the wall. In the picture, Veronica was smiling brightly. She had always been the one who kept this house warm. But when that fire went out, what remained was nothing but the cold ashes of practicality. Amory walked into the house without knocking. He carried with him the smell of busyness and numbers. He sat down across from me without a greeting, without a hug, without even asking how I was. Then he placed a folder on the table. The first words out of his mouth were, "We have already discussed it and made a decision. The beach house has to be sold." Mom went there 4 times a year alone for 26 years. It was a ridiculous waste. No one lives there. It is just sand and wind. I already contacted a real estate agent. If we sell it quickly, we will have a large amount of money to take care of your future. My future, I let out a bitter laugh. You mean a room with 4 white walls in a nursing home and meals measured by calories? Stop being ridiculous, Dad, Amory snapped. You are old. You cannot take care of yourself anymore. And we cannot quit our jobs just to come here and look after you. That house is a financial burden. Mom is gone, and your nostalgia cannot pay property taxes. I looked down at my trembling hands. 26 years. Veronica had always insisted on keeping that house despite the objections of the children and even my own indifference. I had not set foot there since we moved to the city. To me, it was just the past. But to her, what had it really been? No one knew. Not even me. Back then I simply thought my wife was clinging to memories she could not let go of. I should have gone there with her at least once. I should have stayed there with her even for a short while. Instead, I waited until now, when everything was already over. And now my children were treating me like something to be liquidated and sold. What was left for me to hold on to? So I decided I would go there one last time. I would remember my wife before these children tore that place apart and turned it into cash. But the moment I picked up the keys, Amory shouted, "Where do you think you are going? You are not even clear-minded enough to drive. Give me the keys and sign these papers." I looked straight into the eyes of the son I had once loved and been proud of. For the first time in many years I saw him as a stranger. I had been right. The only value I had left to them was a signature. This time I was firm. "I am going," I said, my voice turning hard. "And I will decide for myself whether that place is really as useless as you all want it to be." I pressed the gas pedal and drove away, leaving Amory shouting behind me in anger. The old car rattled as it moved forward, just like my chest was trembling inside. I drove for 3 hours without stopping, ignoring the constant missed calls from Diana. I needed silence. I needed to disappear from their greed. And for the first time in my life, I wanted to understand the woman I had lived with for decades, the woman I now realized I had never truly understood. At this point, you are probably wondering something. Why did I allow my wife for 26 years to return to that old beach house 4 times a year without ever paying attention to it? Well, slowly that secret door will open, just as it was beginning to open for me in that moment. I glanced at an old photo album lying on the passenger seat. It was the only thing I managed to grab from Diana before she could throw it into the trash. Inside were photographs Veronica had taken at this beach house over the years. In those pictures, she wore bright floral dresses. Her hair flew freely in the ocean wind. And her smile. Oh, that smile. It was not the tired, resigned smile I used to see every evening when I came home from work in the city. It was the smile of a woman who was truly alive. Why had I never noticed that difference before? The fault was mine. Back then I was cold indifferent. And if I had to blame something, I would probably blame my work. The city slowly disappeared behind me. The smell of salt began to seep into the car through the window cracks. I turned onto the dirt road leading to the house. In my memory, and according to Amory's description, this place should have been an abandoned wasteland with peeling walls and weeds taller than a man. But when the car stopped in front of the rusty gate, I had to rub my eyes 3 times. The gate was old, yes, but it was wrapped in bright red bougainvillea flowers. There was no smell of decay. Instead, a breeze carried the scent of cedar wood and the warm aroma of fried pastries I could not quite name. My hands trembled as I stepped out of the car. My old legs seemed strangely stronger the moment they touched the soft sand beneath my feet. And then I heard something that nearly stopped my heart. It was not the dull rhythm of the waves. It was laughter. Children laughing, calling out to one another in a language I did not understand, yet somehow it sounded warm and welcoming. I pushed the gate gently. It did not creak in protest like I expected. Instead, it opened onto a small paradise. Our beach house was not ruined at all. It had been repainted a soft sky blue. The wooden chairs on the porch were carefully polished. In the stone table, at the center of the yard, stood a ceramic vase filled with wildflowers. Beside it sat a seashell mug identical to the one I still kept at home. A small boy, maybe 5 years old, with sun-kissed skin and wide, bright eyes, was chasing an old leather ball. He stopped when he saw me. His eyes were not afraid. They were full of curiosity. "Abuelo." He said the Spanish word softly. "Grandfather." I stood frozen. I did not have any grandchildren. Amory and Diana both believed children would only slow down their careers. So who was this child, and why did he look at me with such familiarity? A middle-aged woman wearing a faded apron stepped out from behind the house. When she saw me, the wooden tray in her hands dropped to the ground. Fresh empanadas rolled across the sand. She covered her mouth with trembling hands, tears already filling her eyes. "Señor Bernard," she whispered, "have you finally come?" I looked at the stranger who spoke my name with reverence. I looked at the child now clinging to my leg. Then I looked at the house where my wife had secretly returned for 26 years. And in that moment I realized something. Behind the rusty gate my children were so eager to destroy was a secret that would completely change everything I thought I knew about the woman who had slept beside me for half a century. I had found Veronica's secret garden, but I had no idea that behind this beauty was a bitter truth about betrayal from my own blood and a death sentence my wife had carried alone. I stood frozen in the yard, staring at the woman in front of me. She had sun-kissed skin and hands rough from years of work, yet her eyes held a rare honesty. She quickly wiped her tears on her apron and walked toward me with a respect I had not felt from my own children in a very long time. Her name was Maria Gonzalez. She led me inside the house. Everything there was completely different from the cold, minimalist apartment we had in the city. This house was full of life. The walls were covered with photographs, but none of them were of me or my children. They were pictures of Veronica, with Maria's family photos of children growing up through the years, and handmade cards written in Spanish covering the refrigerator. Maria invited me to sit in an old armchair where she said Veronica always sat whenever she came here. Then she began telling me about the terrible Isabel storm in 2008. At that time, Maria's family, poor migrants with nowhere to go, had lost everything. They were living illegally in a small shelter nearby when Veronica found them. Instead of calling the police or chasing them away, she opened this gate. She gave them a home. She gave them work, taking care of the garden. And most importantly, she gave them dignity. For 15 years, Veronica had secretly used her own savings to support Maria's family, turning this place into a real home for people who had nowhere else to go. But that was not the biggest shock. Maria held my trembling hands. Her voice broke as she spoke. Señora Veronica did not want you to worry, she said. 3 years ago, when the doctors diagnosed her with stage 3 cancer, she chose to receive treatment here. She told you she was coming for rest and sea air, but the truth was, she came here to endure the painful chemotherapy. She did not want you to see her wasting away. She did not want you to spend your remaining years living in fear. My ears rang. Those trips 4 times a year that Amory called a ridiculous waste were actually battles for her life. While I calmly enjoyed her care in the city, complaining about late dinners, she was here alone fighting waves of nausea and losing her hair in this little beach house. Why did she suffer alone? I whispered, tears already running down my old face. Because she loved you more than her own life, Maria answered softly. And because she knew that if your children discovered her illness, they would not worry about her. They would start calculating how the will would be divided. She wanted to protect this house. She wanted to protect us from the cruelty of Amory and Diana. I looked out the window and saw the little boy from earlier laughing in the sunlight. So this was Veronica's real life. A life full of sacrifice and compassion. A life she had protected at all costs from her own children. I had been so comfortable in the care of my wife that I forgot she also had pain that needed to be shared. But the most horrifying truth was still waiting ahead. Because soon I would discover what my own children had been doing behind my back for the past 2 years. I sat there in silence, surrounded by the scent of the past, my ears still ringing from everything Maria had just told me. The truth about Veronica's illness cut into my pride like a fatal blade. But Maria was not finished yet. She stood up, walked to a hidden drawer beneath the kitchen shelf, and pulled out a thick stack of documents stamped with legal seals. Maria looked at me, her eyes filled with a kind of pity that made me feel very small. Señor Bernard, she said softly, Señora Veronica did not only hide her illness from you. For the past 2 years, she was also fighting to protect us from Amory and Diana. It turned out that 2 years ago, while reviewing property tax records, Amory accidentally discovered that Maria's family had been living here. Instead of telling me he and Diana secretly drove here several times, they did not come to visit their sick mother. They came to threaten. They called Maria a fraud. They called those poor children parasites. They threatened to report them to the authorities and have them deported. They said that the moment Veronica took her last breath, they would tear this house down and build a luxury resort in its place. Maria's hands trembled as she gave me a handwritten letter from Veronica. Her handwriting had once been graceful and elegant. Now it looked uneven and shaky, as if every word had been written through waves of pain. I opened the letter. My breath caught in my chest. Bernard, my beloved, when you read this letter, I may no longer be there to make your tea each morning. Do not blame the children. They only follow what modern society teaches them to value numbers more than souls. But here with Maria and the children, I am not trying to be a perfect wife or the proper mother I had to pretend to be in the city. Here I am, simply myself. I feel useful when I help a family with no home share a warm meal. I find happiness in the laughter of children while I fight the pain of chemotherapy. The letter was stained with dried tears. Veronica explained that she had secretly created a trust to protect Maria's family, but she feared that Amory and Diana's greed would eventually find a legal loophole to destroy everything. She begged me the husband she had always believed was her last refuge to wake up and protect this legacy of compassion. I lowered my head into my aging hands as a broken sob escaped my chest inside that quiet room. Where had I been when my wife was being threatened by her own children? What had I done while she fought death and cruelty alone? The answer was painfully simple. I had been too comfortable. Too confident in the illusion of peace I had built around myself. I had just finished reading the final line of Veronica's letter when the roar of engines erupted from the front gate. Two luxury cars screeched to a stop, kicking dust into the air. Amory and Diana stepped out, their faces burning with anger, as if I were some lost child they had come to drag back home. They did not even glance at the beauty around them. Their eyes were fixed only on the house, like hungry predators staring at a piece of rich prey. Amory stormed into the house without even bothering to take off his shoes. He looked at Maria with complete contempt, then turned to me and shouted, "Dad, what the hell are you doing here? I told you that you are not clear-minded enough to travel alone. And who are these people? Why are they still inside our house?" Diana had already started searching through the rooms. She picked up the seashell mug from the table and curled her lip in disgust. "This place is disgusting. It smells like poor people. Dad, look at this. They are taking advantage of your confusion to steal this house. I am calling the police right now and having these parasites thrown out." Maria stepped back against the wall, shielding the little boy who was trembling beside her. The sight sent a surge of electricity down my spine. A wave of anger rose inside me, stronger than anything I had felt in my entire life. Enough, I stood up. My voice was no longer trembling. It rang through the room like a hammer striking steel. "You two have no right to throw anyone out of this house. This is not your house. This is the only place where your mother truly felt loved before she died." Amory sneered and pulled a stack of documents from his pocket. "You are 75 years old, Dad. You do not understand the law. According to inheritance law, when Mom died without a separate will for this property, the house belongs to you and to us, and we have the voting power to sell it without your signature. We will find the best special care facility in the city for you." 2 hours passed in arguments and pressure. They were beyond reason. I stayed quiet, but I on chance to something important. If they could truly sell the house through voting alone, they would not be trying so desperately to force my signature. I looked at the triumphant expression on my son's face, then glanced toward the gate. Right on time. A sleek black car pulled into the yard. The woman who stepped out was Patricia, Veronica's closest attorney, the one I had secretly called 2 hours earlier, after reading the letter. "Sorry to interrupt this family meeting," Patricia said as she entered the room, her voice calm and professional, holding a black leather briefcase. "But Veronica left behind an additional will that was legally notarized 1 year ago, along with an irrevocable trust." Amory's face changed from red to pale in an instant. "A will," he stammered. "That is impossible. Mom did not even have personal assets to create a trust." Patricia gave a small, knowing smile. "She had life insurance and several investments that you never bothered to learn about, and the contents of this will may make you regret coming here today." She opened the briefcase and pulled out a thick set of documents stamped with the seal of a law office. Silence fell over the room, heavy enough that I could hear the distant waves of the ocean and Diana's uneven breathing. Amory tried to grab the papers, but Patricia smoothly stepped aside. "If you have followed the story this far, I know it has touched something inside you. Do me a small favor that only takes a moment. Subscribe. Many people watch without doing it, but it costs you nothing, and it helps you continue receiving the newest and most powerful stories." Patricia cleared her throat and began to read in a calm but commanding voice. "I, Veronica, in a clear and sound state of mind, hereby transfer full ownership of the beach house and the accompanying trust to Maria Gonzalez and her family. This is my way of rewarding the 15 years in which they gave me a real family, something my own children chose not to give me." Amory exploded like a wounded animal. "What? She must have been out of her mind. Dad, look at this. That woman manipulated Mom. This house is worth millions of dollars. You cannot let her give our family's property to a bunch of strangers." Diana rushed forward as well, her face twisted with anger. "Dad, you have to sue. This will is not valid. Mom had cancer. She was not in her right mind when she signed it. You are her husband. You have the right to veto this." "So you knew your mother had cancer, Diana?" My voice cut through the room. "You knew she had cancer and you felt nothing. You only cared about this house, about how much money it was worth. Did you ever once care about what your mother went through during those 3 years? The unbearable pain in her body. And even worse than that, the pain of having children as cold as you." I looked at my 2 children, successful people in expensive suits, but with souls that were painfully poor. Slowly I stood up and pulled another document from my jacket pocket, one Patricia had just handed to me moments earlier. "You want to talk about rights?" I said quietly. Your mother was not confused. She anticipated this very day. In her primary will she left each of you a considerable amount of cash from her life insurance. But there is a condition attached. I paused and looked into their eyes where a spark of greedy hope had suddenly appeared. The condition is simple. If either of you takes any legal action to contest the ownership of this house, or harasses Maria's family in any way, the entire inheritance will immediately be transferred into a charity fund for poor cancer patients. I let the silence hang in the room before adding the final piece. And right now, Attorney Patricia has recorded every insult and threat you have made since you arrived. Amory and Diana fell completely silent. All the numbers they had been calculating in their heads vanished in an instant. They stood there in the bright golden sunlight of the house. Yet they looked small, miserable, and completely alone. Your mother used your own greed and cruelty to lock your hands. I continued, feeling an unexpected calm settle inside me. She protected strangers from her own children. That is the greatest pain a mother can endure. And only now do I finally understand how much it must have hurt her. Silence settled over the room after Patricia finished speaking. Amory stared at the will as if it were a death sentence for every financial plan he had carefully calculated. Diana, meanwhile, no longer looked like the elegant city woman she tried so hard to be. The arrogance had drained from her face, leaving only shock and a trace of shame pushing through the cracks of her greed. I signaled for Maria to take the children outside into the yard. I did not want them to witness any more corruption from the people who claimed to be my family. When the door closed, I slowly walked toward Veronica's old armchair, placed my hand on the worn fabric, and looked straight at my two children standing frozen in the middle of the house. "Do you know why your mother called this the only place where she truly lived?" I asked. My voice no longer carried anger, only an endless sadness. Because in the city she had to play the role of the wife of a husband who was too busy with blueprints, and the mother of children who were too busy with numbers. There she was, just a decoration for our success. But here, she was a savior, a friend, a real human being who could laugh and cry without fear of being judged. I opened another bundle of Veronica's letters. Letters she had written to me but never sent. One of them was dated 2 years ago, shortly after Amory came here for the first time to threaten Maria's family. "Bernard," I read aloud, my voice trembling with every word today. "Amory came here. He looked at this house with the eyes of a land trader. He looked at Maria as if she were nothing more than an obstacle." I cried, "Bernard. Not because I feared losing the house, but because I realized we had failed to teach our children how to love. I did not dare tell you because I knew it would break your heart and I wanted to preserve your peace in the final years of your life. But I must act. I must use the little strength I have left to protect the last piece of kindness that still exists in this place." I lifted my eyes and looked at Amory. My son lowered his head, his fists clenched tightly. I did not know whether he felt regret or simply anger that his plan had collapsed. But at that moment, I no longer cared. "Your mother fought cancer alone," I said slowly, each word landing like a hammer in the quiet room, because she was afraid you would treat her illness as a financial burden. She was right. The moment she passed away, you both demanded that this place be sold. You never asked how she spent the final years of her life. You only asked how much this house was worth. Diana began to sob, but it sounded more like the crying of someone cornered than genuine remorse. "Dad, I did not know. I was only thinking about your future." "My future," I interrupted calmly, "is not in some luxury nursing home purchased with the betrayal of your mother's final wishes. My future is here. Here where Veronica's warmth still lives in every flower Maria cares for. Here where I can hear children laughing and calling me grandfather without a single calculation behind it." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the endless ocean stretching before me. A strange sense of relief filled my chest. For the first time in decades, I no longer felt like a confused old man being pushed around by his children. I was Bernard, Veronica's husband, and I still had one final mission to fulfill. I turned to Patricia and said calmly, "Finish all the legal procedures. I want to sign every transfer document right now, and starting today I will stay here." Shock spread across Amory and Diana's faces. In that moment they realized they had not only lost the house, they had truly lost their father to the very people they called strangers. Patricia placed the documents on the old wooden table. The sound of the fountain pen moving across the paper echoed sharply in the suffocating silence. I picked up the pen. My hand no longer trembled. Each signature I wrote was not just a legal confirmation. It was a blade cutting the last thread that tied me to the cold pragmatism standing in front of me. Amory lunged forward, his face burning red, his voice cracking. Dad, you have completely lost your mind. You are throwing away everything we built. You are really going to stay in this broken fishing village with these people. They will drain every dollar from you the moment we leave. I set the pen down and looked directly into his eyes. My gaze was so cold that even Amory instinctively stepped back. They cared for your mother when she was suffering the most, I said quietly, while you were busy calculating how profitable her death would be. They gave her a smile. You gave her threats. If they wanted my money, they could have taken it long ago. But what they gave me is something your money will never buy: compassion. Only then did Diana seem to understand the gravity of the situation. She stopped shouting and switched to a desperate, pleading tone. Dad, we were wrong. I promise we will bring you home. We can start over. I will not take the porcelain sets anymore. I will. It is too late to pretend now, Diana. I interrupted. The porcelain sets, the pearl necklaces. You can take them all. To me, they are only objects. What I am keeping here is your mother's soul, and the values that both of you lost a long time ago. Then I turned toward Maria, who had been standing quietly by the doorway with tears in her eyes. I handed her a copy of the will. Maria, from now on, you and your family do not need to fear anyone ever again. This is your home. Veronica chose you, and I will honor her choice until my final breath. Maria fell to her knees and took my hands, her sobs breaking through the quiet room. The little boy from earlier ran over and wrapped his arms around my leg. A strange warmth spread through my chest, the kind of feeling I had lost during the 26 years I spent living inside the polished illusion of the city. I picked up Veronica's final letter. In it she had written, Bernard, I wish you could hear the sound of the waves here at sunrise just once. It is not only the sound of water, it is the echo of freedom. I found my freedom here, and now I leave it to you. I looked at Amory and Diana. They now looked no different from uninvited guests. Patricia, I said quietly, please escort these two out of the house. They have no business here anymore. And remember, if there is any harassment from them, activate the charity trust immediately, as Veronica instructed. Amory opened his mouth as if he wanted to argue. But when he saw the firmness in my eyes and the calm authority of the lawyer standing beside me, he simply turned away in frustration. Diana followed behind him silently, though not without glancing back at the house one last time. There was regret in her eyes. Not regret for losing a mother, regret for losing an asset. When the rusty gate slammed shut behind my greedy children, a new chapter of my life officially began. But could an old man like me really rebuild anything from the ruins of broken trust? I stood on the porch while the ocean wind lifted my silver hair. For the first time in 26 years, I truly breathed. I was no longer the lonely man sitting in a dark kitchen in the city. I had come home. A home not built on numbers but on letters, laughter, and a love strong enough to reach beyond death itself. The sound of Amory and Diana's engines faded down the dirt road until only silence remained. I watched the last traces of dust settle into the earth. A sense of relief spread through me, as if I had finally removed a heavy suit of armor I had been wearing for decades. I stepped back inside the house. Maria and her family were still standing there, their faces filled with disbelief. Patricia gathered her documents and looked at me with quiet understanding. You did the right thing, Bernard, she said softly. Veronica would be proud of you. I walked toward the small work table in the corner of the room. Scattered across it were pieces of scrap wood and a few simple carving tools. Maria stepped closer and spoke gently. Senora Veronica always said you were the most talented wood craftsman she had ever known. She kept the little things you made when you were young inside this box. She handed me a small wooden box. When I opened it, my heart tightened. Inside were little wooden sparrows and tiny sailboats I had carved for Veronica when we were newly married. I had forgotten them long ago. I had allowed the busyness of the city to harden these hands. But she had not forgotten. She had treasured them like priceless gifts. I will stay here, Maria, I said quietly, my voice steady. I want to learn how to love these pieces of wood again, the way Veronica loved your family. That evening, for the first time in 6 months since my wife passed away, I sat down at the dinner table with Maria's family. There were no arguments about stocks, no dry tapping of keyboards. Only the warm smell of empanadas, the cheerful chatter of children, and the simple warmth of genuine human kindness. I looked at the empty chair beside me where I knew Veronica's spirit was smiling. She had not only left me a house, she had given me a chance to live again. Everything had seemed like the end, but in truth it was the beginning of a journey of healing. Could a 70-year-old man truly rediscover the meaning of life through scraps of wood and the kindness of strangers? The bright morning sunlight poured through the window, carrying with it the salty taste of the sea and the steady rhythm of the waves, a sound I had forgotten for nearly 3 decades. I sat on the porch, my aging hands slowly carving a piece of cedar wood. The smooth grain seemed to whisper stories about Veronica's resilience, about how she quietly endured every storm to keep this garden alive. My new life at this seaside home was simple, but full of meaning. In the early morning, Maria and I watered the bright red bougainvillea. In the evening, I taught the little boy, whom I now called my grandson, how to carve simple wooden toys. I no longer heard the urgent ringing of Amory's phone calls. I no longer had to face Diana's cold practicality. Their names had quietly faded from my life, not out of hatred, but because they had never truly belonged in a world built on compassion. If my story has touched some small corner of your heart, please subscribe and share this video so its message can reach others. Family is not only blood. Family is the people who choose to stand beside you when you are at your weakest. I eventually realized that the greatest punishment for my children was not losing $1 million house. The real punishment was the day they would understand that money can buy a room in the most luxurious nursing home in the world, but it can never buy a warm meal or the sincere smiles that surround me here. They may have won the race for wealth, but they lost the far greater race of becoming decent human beings. As I look out toward the endless ocean, I want to leave you with one final thought. Do not wait until it is too late to truly listen to your partner. Do not allow numbers and practicality to dry out your soul. Treasure the people who quietly sacrifice for you, because sometimes the person closest to us is the one we understand the least. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this story. If it meant something to you, please share it, and remember to cherish the people around you. Goodbye for now, and I will see you again in the next stories here on Dad's Real Life Revenge. Thank you for listening.